Hey guys, it's Daryl. It's Thursday morning, and I just want to talk about the Native Americans and their seafaring capabilities. Actually, it's a lot simpler than that. I'm part Native American and French Canadian. I remember my grandmother on my mother's side explaining to me where we came from. I remember her giving me a book. It was called Algonquin, talking about the native people, the Algonquin people around this part of the country. And there, she gave me some more information about the Micmac Nation from Maine. And then there was one other one, Micmac, Penobscot, Algonquin. So I was curious. I'm going to put a few links to some of the books I've been reading and some of the information I was reading. This was the general idea I came up with at the beginning. What if I was thinking about Trump and talking about shithole countries? And I thought about how we colonized and enslaved, like the African Americans, how we colonized this country, what we do in Central America, just in general. And I started thinking, well, what if we'd ever did that? What if um, it's a hard thing to imagine, but what if like 600-700 years ago, what if slavery never started? And where would those countries like Rwanda and Botswana, where would those countries be now? How would they have developed without colonial interference from England, Spain, and Portugal and all those countries? Where would they be now? I don't. My opinion is they wouldn't be shithole countries. My opinion is the colonization, enslavement of a people um, takes away from their culture. It takes away from their self sufficiency. Anyway, I started thinking about America. I started thinking about how Leif Erikson and the Vikings came this way exploring. Um, I started thinking, what if Native Americans sailed out and actually made it to Europe or across the top there to Greenland, Iceland, across to the Icelandic nations. What if the Native American people met the Europeans on their own terms? You know what I mean? If they were exploring, and instead of the Europeans coming here and taking control. So the first thing I had to do was I started researching how much seafaring people the Native Americans were, and I was surprised. I was very surprised, and especially my own people. I was quite proud to see that my own ancestors were involved in a lot of seafaring activities. They talked about the Wampanoags, Mashpees, and I believe those are parts of the Algonquin Nation. The Algonquin Nation covers a huge part: Connecticut, New York, Rhode Island. I think it's a cult. Algonquin is more of a culture, a nation, and then you have the tribes. Um, but I was amazed to see that there was a lot of seafaring natives. They had canoes, and then they had these dugouts that were they held up to 40 people, and there was estimates that some held up to 80 people because of these huge old growth trees growing around here. And they were talking specifically the Algonquin people going out into the ocean from the Hudson River in New York all the way up to Cape Cod. And I didn't know, but the part about the Europeans coming here and landing on Plymouth Rock, you hear that side of the story, but you don't hear the rest of it on how the Native Americans went out to sea and ran into a lot of these ships. And then like I said, I'm going to leave the links to a couple books that are very interesting. And of course, the Europeans eventually kind of enslaved because some of these Native Americans were very adept at seafaring and fishing. They ended up enslaving, or I don't know what it's called when you grab somebody and put them on your boat. I forgot what the term of that's called. They were put to work unwillingly on the Europeans' boats to navigate and and fish and all this other stuff. So it was interesting reading up on this. Because you get the impression that Native Americans were a landlocked people, and just content like that, and that's not true. So I start to think, and this was in the 1620s, I believe. So what if Columbus or some of those other explorers didn't make it, if the timeline changed slightly and the Native Americans developed a larger boat or got lucky and got a boat capable of making it across, or I don't know, even I don't know if they'd ever make it to Spain. I would think they would go north across the top, but still, it's an interesting turn on how things did work out. That what if Native Americans were the first to sail out that way? Because I don't like, I get a lot of, I've had people actually comment to me before about, it was insulting comments about Native Americans I actually had one person comment saying that my heritage was from a conquered people, that my people were conquered. And then he went on to say, don't forget who's in charge, meaning the white people, the Europeans. Yeah, I actually got comment from, you should see some of the comments I get sometimes. So, I wanted to see if there was more to that, what would have happened if Native Americans met other cultures on their own terms instead of being invaded, more or less. So it's just an interesting thought on the way things turned out. Where would America be today? Imagine if Native Americans had made it to England first, or even Greenland, and what if the millions of Native Americans were never wiped out and that culture prevailed here, and the Europeans never really got a solid foothold? That was kind of my hope, I guess, in wondering, in reading these books. Is there some possibility if some turn of fate would have allowed for that? And where would America be today if the country was still mainly Native American? So that was my dream, my hope. But yeah, so anyway, I'm going to leave the links down below. It's some interesting reading on the seafaring nations of Native Americans in this area in New England. The Mashapees, the Pequots. As I'm sure you guys have heard, a lot of people, of course, everybody's heard of the Pequot Nation and their casino here, which I am not related to. Algonquin and the tribes of Maine and everything. But anyway, I'll leave the links down below. Just a thought, something to think about today. Have a good Thursday.